Hello everyone. Today I will be featuring a ship I probably haven't featured in more than a year. The matchmaking is pretty horrendous. Well, it's pretty rough. It's 3 tier 9s, everything else is tier 10, and there's an S6 as well. And I'm of course playing the Große Kurfürst. After playing the quick and agile little Asashio in the previous commentary, it was time for the big tank. And we start off by shooting a full broadside Worcester. And we don't get a single citadel. In fact, we only get 3 overpens and 2 pens out of 12 guns, which is a pretty disappointing result. He's actually still kind of playing with fire here. Look, he's turning back in and he's giving more broadside, so obviously I have to take this shot again. Now, this is not how you play a Worcester. If you're gonna open water gunboat, then you have to be incredibly careful with your angles, and he only gets 3 overpens again. So that Worcester gets very lucky with his life, and he gets away with it. And I'm hoping he's not gonna become a problem later in this match, because a Worcester can very easily become a problem for everything. Wait, he's giving even more broadside? Man, that guy really should be going down by now. But then again, one of the great weaknesses of the German BBs, wow, a bounce. A bounce and only 1 pen. So that Worcester gave 3 broadsides and didn't get citadel once. I have to say, my Worcester doesn't quite work like that, but he does get away with seemingly the impossible. No way, really? A 4th time? This time he's actually angling away. This time he's actually trying to actively avoid the shells for the first time so far. And it looks like I don't think we're gonna get any hits on the way he's going. Meanwhile though, the enemy team is actually pushing quite aggressively into this cap, which is surprising. Well, I decided to just park because, well, I am a Große Kurfürst. The one thing that sets this ship apart from pretty much all the others is the fact that, well, you have 106,000 health. Without running the survivability expert, which you obviously shouldn't be running on a battleship to begin with. So you got a huge chunk of health. That was surprisingly little damage. I would expect something like 20,000 on a full broadside like that. But you got 106,000 health. So at this point, I'm literally just gonna park here and sit there and shoot them and pretty much bait them into shooting me. We got a fair few people targeting me. I'm baiting out some torpedoes. You note that I'm reversing, and I know that they have ZOWs and they have DDs and they have stuff, so there's probably a bunch of torps coming my way. So I already know there's torps coming my way, so I stop reversing and I start accelerating, since all I'm literally doing here is baiting out all the torps to be sent my way. Instead of being sent against the Des Moines or like some useful targets, I'm just baiting them out on myself. I also have Hydro running, which is of course something that sets the ship apart, and there you can see all the torps I just baited out. They are all coming my way, but I already knew this because I intentionally drew them out, and I'm just calmly accelerating out of the way of these torps with Hydro, and already knowing they were coming, it's very easy to dodge them, even if the ship is so incredibly clumsy. So the Kurfürst goes down, and overall this push of theirs is collapsing quite quickly. The ZOW is trying to go nose in, but the ZOW nose cannot tank your shells, so I'm literally just gonna put my crosshair right on his nose and just gonna pull the trigger, and there is nothing he can do to stop these shells. He tries some last minute ditch dodging, but there's no way. He's absolutely guaranteed dead. And I'm gonna keep moving for a bit, not sure how many more torps there might be coming, and trying to see if they have something else pushing this flank. Maybe that we can get vision of the Worcester. More importantly though, right now there is a friendly smoke here, and if we look at the minimap we can see there's in fact a lot of planes coming in. You can see there's torpedo planes, there's bombers, and if there's AP bombers especially, well, they can kind of one-shot me, but looks like these are actually HE bombers, so I'm still just gonna sit in the smoke though. I'm not really in a hurry to leave the smoke right now. We've gotten a really good advantage on this flank. The enemy push has stopped, and there's no reason for me to eat a ton of unnecessary damage. Rather just focus down the planes and try to shred as many of them as possible. Now, the Große Kurfürst has multiple weaknesses. The weaknesses of the Große Kurfürst include horrible firing angles. The firing angles are really terrible, and the German dispersion is extremely questionable at times. In return though, it's got this incredible tankiness, Yamato struggles to overmatch it nose in. You can just push nose into a Yamato and he can't really do much about you. Well, he can target your superstructure, of course, but in general, he will struggle to do anything. You can give broadsides and your turtleback will protect you against any citadels. And your massive health pool, of course, means that heals, which scale based on max health, heal you for a significant amount. Not quite as much as a Royal Navy heals, but still for a very significant amount. Another big difference is that your armor is very strong, and most IFHE, for example the booster or IFHE spam, can easily be shattered by your armor. Not by the superstructure, but the armor on your deck, and so forth. So, in terms of tankiness, the Grosse Kurfürst has always been an extremely tanky battleship. That's why for a long time, well, pretty much ever since I pretty much started playing this ship, I have recommended something I call the tank build. And that's what I'm running here now. I don't think I've changed this build for a good, I don't know, what, 2 years? I don't think I've changed this build. I mean, there might have been small nuances, but the fundamentals of the build has always been take the one thing the ship is the best at, and that's sheer raw tankiness, and then improve it even further. And that's been my goal from the get-go. Now, we got 3 Shimakazes on this flank. I would assume if they all just pushed into this cap, they could easily secure it, but they should be able to secure it. I'm trying to reverse to make sure that no ship can pop out and try to harass them. Ultimately, I would like to maybe reposition. I don't know. I'm in a pretty good spot. I'm right outside A. I can maybe support B if they try to go B as well. And if I pop my spotter plane, maybe I can lob some shells over on this Republic. Nope. The problem is, of course, that the shell velocity is quite fast on the Grosse Kurfürst, like all German battleships. Now, I say the problem. Normally it's not a problem, but in situations like that, when you want to lob shells over islands, it does become quite awkward. I decide I need to push in because nothing is really happening, so I start turning my guns to the other side. Gun turret management is very important when playing battleships, especially high tier battleships, because you miss out on so much firepower if you don't have it ready. And on the Grosse Kurfürst, where you basically have to give full broadsides to even use your guns, turret management is especially important. My teammates are starting to die quite quickly though. I think it's one of those classic cases, you know, your team has an advantage. So everyone on your team decides, you know what, we should totally charge into the enemy hold-up position one by one to somehow make our advantage stronger. Now obviously it doesn't work like that, but instead what we see right now is what happens when you charge into a bunkered up enemy that's literally sitting there waiting for you, and you do it one at a time, which is usually what happens in random battles because, well, there's no real coordination. Your teammates start dying, one by one by one by one. And that's exactly what we're seeing. Another significant issue seems to be that our carrier is not very good by the looks of it. I see him throwing away a lot of planes at the booster over and over and over again. On the other side, the enemy carrier seems to be actively killing a lot of ships. So this game is very, very far from decided. Oh, I'm about to shoot the Montana, but my spotter plane runs out just before. Still, he comes out full broadside, and this should be a very easy kill. There's no way he can withstand that. Even I get 5 overpens, which is pretty unfortunate, but there's no way he can survive that. So I'm pushing. My plan was to push down this flank while we still held middle map control. But here we get a bit of an issue with the clumsiness of this ship. In the time it took me to turn my ship around and push down this flank, everyone we had in the middle died. Every single ship we had in the middle has managed to die in the time it took to push my ship down this flank. So at this point I decided, well, we can't have all 3 battleships on one flank. I got a Conqueror in front of me and a Musashi behind me, and what is it I always highlight, which is one of the most important things when you're playing battleships. Don't go where every other battleship is. You get no crossfires. You create no dangerous crossfires at all. In fact, you make it so easy for the enemy team to angle against you because, well, they only need to angle against one point of interest because there are no threatening crossfires. So I start turning around just to get another crossfire into B and to be able to shoot this Republic that's moving into B. But there's another reason. I mentioned that I'm not very impressed by my carrier. Well, we can see that the Moskva has capped A a while ago, and we see that B is being contested. So I think at this point it's not... wouldn't be surprising in any way to see some of these ships start to push and perhaps try to kill our Taiho. And although I think the combat value of this losing the Taiho is probably not that big, because, well, I'm looking at his squads and it's looking like he's already starting to be deplaned. You see the half-full squads in front of us. That means our carrier has been deplaned in about 11 minutes, which is kind of terrifying, but I still don't want him to die, because if he dies, he loses a lot of points. So we're gonna act like, what is it called in NFL, like a linebacker or whatever. We're gonna go park our big, juicy Grosse Kurfürst. We're gonna go park it between the Taiho and any incoming enemy ships, and we're gonna try to keep him alive. Now, I know there's a Grossovoy in that camp. I know that Grossovoy will try to actively torp me, so we already popped the Hydro, and right now we're just trying to intercept the enemy fleet so they cannot kill off our Taiho, and maybe give my team down south, who's still dying, the opportunity to get something done down that flank, or so one can hope. This Republic, he is giving far too much broadside. I'm okay with trading broadside to broadside, because I can even citadel him if I get lucky, but he cannot citadel me. And no, he's actually focusing on others, and that's a significant mistake. And a 24,000 damage volley on the Republic. I turn out though, because there's gotta be Grossovoy torps coming at this point. Even with Hydro active, there's no way there's not Grossovoy torps coming. And even if you have Hydro active, you can't be caught mid-turn, because the ship is so clumsy. We're talking over 1 kilometer in turning circle, plus when you run the tank build, your rudder shift is pretty garbage. So you gotta preemptively dodge torps. Even with Hydro active, it's not enough to dodge torps when you see them coming. No, you have to actively, preemptively prepare for the incoming torpedoes and react to them in plenty of time. And this is what I've done here, and I managed to dodge it. Now I expect the Grossovoy is pushing through. He wants the Taiho, and he probably wants me as well, and I'm pretty okay with this. We are gonna start turning in, and once again, give my Taiho some room, because my Taiho reacted very slowly. My Taiho is right behind me, and he can easily get caught and killed. The Grossovoy is here, as we predicted, and right now we need to zone them away from the Taiho. The Taiho at this point is entirely deplaned, so he's literally an XP Pinata, and if they kill him, they will gain the lead in points. So, well, not quite the lead, I think, but they will gain a huge chunk of points. And I cannot allow them to do that, so we're gonna push into the Moskva. Now the Moskva, usually people go, oh, but it's so tanky, and in fact, if you look at this volley here, it is very, very tanky, unless you hit the very right spot. There are weaknesses to the Moskva armor scheme, and the weaknesses is the very tip of the nose. The lower part of the nose is protected by that 50mm armor. The central deck armor is 50mm. You cannot overmatch those. But the very, very tip of the nose, right in front of the turrets, I can show you. You see where my crosshair is? Right below the turrets. That's the tip of the nose, because it's reversing. And that's exactly where we want to hit. And dispersion finally favors us. So we do a 10 plus 8, an 18k volley with our full broadside into him. And he's really starting to feel the pain. My Hydro has run out at this point, which obviously means I have to actively pay attention to priority target. So whenever the number up there goes from 2 to 1, as it did earlier, I know that I am being torped. In this case, I know it briefly went down to 1, so I know the Grossovoy just dropped torps my way. So we are dropping our speed, and we're turning into where the Grossovoy is. The carrier joins into the party, because why not? I'm a very, very juicy target at this point. I'm trying to draw all the attention towards myself, because my team has been trying to very, very actively throw this game. But there's a reason we run the tank Cold Force build, and that is of course to tank a lot of damage. Slowing down dodges the torps, and I'm turning in towards the Grossovoy even further, because I need to, first of all, you need to put pressure on a destroyer. You can't allow him to just sail around wherever he wants. As long as you keep pressure on him, you know where he is. If you heard him in front of you, you know exactly where he is. And secondly, going nose in towards him makes it easier to dodge the incoming torpedoes. If I stop chasing him, then he can go around my broadside, and then it becomes very, very hard to dodge the torps. At this point, my AP has done so much damage and broken the turret so many times on this Moskva that I'm switching to HE to secure the kill, because of course the HE pen is more than enough to overcome his 50mm armor, so I can actually get the kill here. So I'm switching to the HE 5 pens, but almost no damage, and probably a bit of saturation playing a part here. If you're wondering why the chat is all in Russian, by the way, I'm playing on the Russian server again. A German battleship on Russia in December. Sounds like a recipe for disaster, but we can make it work. This time I'm not afraid to aim very low at the nose, because as I mentioned, with HE we have no issues overmatching that armor. There's a bit of UI bug going on in this replay right now, because I actively pop my Hydro here. There's no reason not to pop a Hydro if you're chasing a destroyer like this, so my Hydro is actually active here. And this is the first time I've seen a replay bug out like this, not showing the consumables being used, but it is in fact active, and that's why I can see those torps so far away, because the consumable is spotting them so far away. But even then, without it, you might note that I was already about to dodge it, and that's because I'm constantly changing course. I'm changing course, I'm changing speed, I'm making sure he cannot catch me. And the Wooster from earlier that got so lucky with all those broadsides, of course he comes back and haunts us. Now, our armor is able to shatter most of his HE, but he is starting fires and he's being very annoying, so we're switching back to AP at this point, and it's time to teach this guy a lesson, and that's that RNG can only save you so many times. There comes a time when it's time to end this bullshit. Hydro spots another set of torps, but once again I'm already turning, so they would have missed anyway. And this time the Wooster does not get so lucky, and we finally get rid of that pest. And we have managed to turn this, what was it, 1 versus 3 with a carrier adding in. We've managed to turn it into 1 versus 1. The problem is, I'm pretty sure Hydro has been active for so long now that it's practically running out. I switch back to HE after using the AP on the Wooster, of course. After the AP changes against DDs, you have to switch to HE to deal consistent damage to destroyers. I get a pretty decent volley on him, 5.7k, but I don't know if he's got a heal, and it's still quite risky. So now that we know that our Hydra is on cooldown, we really have to pay attention to that priority target. You saw that detected number? It went from 1 to disappearing. That means he just launched torps. So we're changing course a bit. Launching some volleys on the SX. It's going back to 1. He's switching to his torp tubes back and forth, back and forth. So I'm constantly shifting my course a bit as well, turning in towards the SX. My HE volley on the SX starts a fire, which is fantastic, because he's gonna have to damage Gonnet if he wants to send planes, because almost no one uses that terrible perk. And throw some more HE his way. Oh, now you can see it's staying. The number disappeared for a very long time, so I'm almost certain there's torps coming. So at this point, I make the decision to pretty much fully stop my ship, full stop, just to make sure all the torpedoes are overshooting. And once I've fully stopped, well, almost fully slowed down, only afterwards will I start accelerating for a bit. I popped the spotter plane as I expect the SX to go behind the island. Also, I popped the spotter plane because it might give me some early warning of the incoming torpedoes, because this thing is clumsy. So you gotta actively predict the torps. And slowing down as I did actually worked very well. With the combination of priority target, I was able to force him to overshoot all of his torpedoes. And now I'm actively accelerating, because there might be follow-up torpedoes. He's launching the tubes one at a time, which makes it kind of tricky to always get the predictions right. And it looks like I'm gonna blind shoot, and unluckily I thought the SX was gonna stay undetected for longer, but it actually gets detected right after. If I had held my fire for maybe half a second longer, I would have been able to secure my Kraken here, but no such luck, and I think the Shimakaze is gonna secure this SX. The Shimakaze basically chased around his spawn the entire game, chasing him. And I got AP loaded, would need HE at this point. There's probably more torps coming, but as I mentioned, by actively shifting my speed, by slowing down, accelerating, changing, this Grossovoy has in fact managed to land 0 torpedoes on me. I want to put that into perspective. I played a Grosse Kurfürst in the backline, fighting multiple enemy ships, and simply by constantly shifting course, constantly shifting speeds, that enemy destroyer was not able to land a single torpedo on me. Not a single torpedo. And that is really the strength, and that's when people say, oh, but torpedoes are so uncounterable. No, there is something that's very, very strong against torpedo boats, and that's actively paying attention to priority target and actively constantly shifting your course and speed. It makes it so hard, it makes it so very hard for destroyers to get those big torp volleys in, and all he really needed to do was land one single volley on me, and I would have died, and if I would have died, our carrier would have probably have died, and then we would have lost the cap behind me, and we would probably have lost the game. So this match ended with a 245,000 damage. Sadly no Kraken, I was very close, but I just barely missed out on it. But the rewards kinda tell the story. Confederate, Devastating Strike, what is it called, Dreadnought, Fireproof, and High Caliber. So we tanked a ton and we dealt a lot of damage, which is exactly what you want to do in the tank Kurfürst. In fact, if we look at the team score, 3.2k, I think we might have pushed it to about 3.4 if we would have secured the last kill with the Kraken. Unfortunate though, but it does kind of tell also the story of our Taiho, which only shot down 10 planes and was deplaned, and how hard that makes a match for the rest of the team. Still though, detailed report. Damage received 187,000, potential damage 2.2 million, and a pretty hilarious 42k spotting in a Kurfürst of all things. But overall, the damage, of course, damage plays its small part, but this build, this tank build of the Grosse Kurfürst, it's still my absolutely favorite build because it takes what makes the Grosse Kurfürst strong and makes it even stronger. And that's my idea of a balanced, a fun build that enhances the strengths of a ship to the point that it's very enjoyable to make it work. In fact, let me show you guys my recommended build. As usual, I will start with the modules. Consumable wise, I do highly prefer running premium damage control and premium repair party for the faster cooldown and especially for the additional heal as well. After that, follow it up with Hydro and Spotter Plane in that order. I've also recently started using the 420s instead of the 406s. The reason has been for the slight improvement in penetration. However, I mean, it's not a straightforward upgrade by any means, or downgrade. It's more of a side grade really. I prefer the slightly improved penetration and slightly improved alpha over the better DPM. Now, I'm not gonna go set in stone, this is the best possible choice you can make. No, I think this is very, very situational. There are situations where the faster reload will absolutely be more useful, but there are also situations where the slight improvement in penetration and the higher alpha will be more useful. So this is something that you're gonna have to decide on yourself. I will mention though that I have switched from the 406s to the 420s as of late, because that slight improvement in penetration has been quite useful at ranges, especially since BBs like to give me a lot of broadside at a lot of ranges, and I like being able to smack them around when that happens. Upgrade wise, secondary survival, tankiness, better gun dispersion, more tankiness, concealment, which is another form of tankiness, and reload booster for the guns. Note that I don't really like the legendary upgrade for the Grosse Kurfürst because you're already so starved for range. Your 20.6k range is really bad because your concealment is 13.6. The worse your concealment is, the more range you need to compensate, and the Grosse Kurfürst has terrible concealment and terrible range, and adding the legendary module to even further mess up your range is not something I particularly enjoy. So yes, the legendary module will absolutely have its uses if you can make it work, but when it comes to overall consistency, I prefer not running it at all. On this Russian account, I don't even have it, so easy choice in this case. Captain perks wise, priority target. You saw how much value I got out of this to just constantly dodge those torps. You see how the perk actually says the detection indicator will show the number of opponents that are currently aiming at your ships with main battery guns. Obviously, when a destroyer switches from main battery guns to torpedoes, he is no longer aiming at you with the main battery. So every time that number goes down, you know that the DD is switching to their torpedoes to torp you, so you can play around it like I did against the Grossovoy and how I dodged all of his torpedoes. Follow that up with AR. The lower you go, the more Daka you deal. Superintendent for that additional Hydro and heal, Concealment Expert, Fire Prevention, Basics of Survivability, and then finally Expert Marksman. You could potentially switch Expert Marksman for Jack of all trades, but I do like to have some flexibility, especially since you are often in situations more of a brawly kind in the Grosse Kurfürst, or that's where you should be, because that's kind of where the ship shines. Ultimately though, the majority of the captain perks are absolutely focused on pure tankiness and pure survival. In the flags follow this very same scheme, where you have Fire Prevention and healing as your additional sets to make you as tanky as possible. Then I've added in secondaries and faster consumable usage and even speed. I think the only reason I'm running detonation, I'm a bit surprised I'm actually running detonation on the battleship. It might be simply because I like to try to maintain a fairly high average on the Russian server on my Große Kurfürst. In fact, on the Russian server, I think I've almost played already 100 Große Kurfürst matches, and my goal has always been to maintain a very high standard in the ship. And in fact, if we look at it here, 164,000 average so far with the Große Kurfürst. So I love playing on the Russian servers, of course, because I don't get focus fire the same way. I don't have the same kind of fan base on the Russian server as I do on the EU or the NA servers, and there's no stream snipers and stuff like that. So I get to play like any other guy on the Russian server, which is probably why I love playing on the server so much, because, well, 760k base XP on this account, or on the Große Kurfürst already on this account, so it does kind of tell the story. Anyway, thank you guys for tuning in, thank you guys for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. Oh, and by the way, in case you're watching my streams as of late, Wargaming has added so that if you watch my stream, you can get Twitch drops. Well, they have added it to all World of Warships streams, obviously, but if you happen to tune into my stream, you will be getting these drops in-game if you link your account between Wargaming and Twitch. So that's pretty awesome, and I think a lot of people are actually actively making use of it lately, which is pretty awesome as well. Anyway, thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, I'll talk to you guys later.